see how I'm laying that back?
Wow. Kick those tires and start that fake fire. It is time to camp. Today we welcome an artist, an icon, a legend of sorts. A man who, pardon the pun, was instrumental in the forging of the Minneapolis sound. He is here with us today. He has produced more songs than I can name and has the hits to prove it. So please welcome to the fire, Mr. André Cymone.
Thank you.
Was that okay? Was that good?
That was great.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's a wrap then. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate you joining us, man. Well, so I always ask this, or sometimes do. Of all the mobile campfire studios that you've been in this year, would you say this is the best?
Let me think. Yeah, I think this is the best. I think this,
Okay.
you got everybody beat.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
In the same way you forged this iconic sound that millions of people around the world look to for enjoyment and joy, I hope to do the same thing with indoor campsites.
I think the future looks bright.
That's right. I think so too. Also, it is 72 degrees outside, so
Yeah.
feeling good. All right. So we are camping. You're from Minnesota.
Yes,
A lot of lakes, a lot of bugs, a lot of snow.
10,000 lakes, 10 billion mosquitoes, wood ticks all over the place.
Wood
so,
ticks?
Wood ticks.
Have you ever gotten a tick?
Oh, are you kidding me? Yes. I used to play with them. I actually used to get them to fight, wood tick fights, like cockfights. I used to do wood tick.
Wait, ticks will fight with each other?
Yeah, and then you can get people in bet, and they go around and they.
You're messing with me.
Just a little bit.
Okay. There's no such thing as, for the viewers at home, there is, and for PETA watching, there is no wood tick. But
They arm wrestle and all of that.
all right, you're done. That's a wrap on Andre. Thanks for coming in. So, did you camp? Did you grow up camping?
I did. Yes, I did. Absolutely. My family, my father's side of the family is from Fergus Falls, which is way up north Minnesota, and so we fished, hunted, camped, everything, all of that stuff. So, yeah, and then I went to camp every year when I was a kid, all the way up until maybe till I was 12, I guess, 11.
Okay. I mean, lots of nature up there, so you're doing
Yeah.
good up there.
Oh, yeah.
It's beautiful in Minnesota, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Especially summertime, I bet.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful.
Do you go back to
I
Minneapolis?
do quite a bit. Well, not now since we're in this pandemic state of mind, but
That's right.
But before, literally right before, and as soon as this is done, or as soon as I get the green light from the family to be able to, enter population again, I'm gonna make that move.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, really? You're going to head back?
Yeah, well, for not completely, just make the move to get on a plane or ride or drive or however we're gonna get
I'm
there.
still
but
working up to going to the grocery store,
Smart man, smart
Trader
man.
Joe's.
Yeah,
Can't wait. I'm
Yeah.
excited to go there. No, it is interesting. It's like those are the things that you took for granted, and now I have friends who call me and their spouse will say, "Hey, can you go out and we're out of paper?" He's like, "I'm on it. I can't
Yeah.
wait. I'm going to
Yeah.
run out and go do those errands." And then he said he'll get just enough that they meet the need, but not enough to where he knows he has to go back.
Yeah.
So he's
yeah.
like, "Oh, you need me to go back? I'll go out."
Yeah.
Any excuse to get out of the house, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't get out very often, although because between my wife and my kids, they really will not let me leave. They're like, you can't go. But they let me go to the hardware store, which is weird because there's a hardware store near my house. So they'll let me go there because there's hardly anybody ever there. And they know it, so that's one thing. But the other day I went out and went to a Anawald, which is a bigger hardware store. Because I had to buy a bunch of wood and stuff because, one of the other things that I do other than music is I paint and all that kind of fun stuff, and I build stuff like cabinets and desks and...
Are you taking orders right now?
It's funny you should say that because one of the neighbors asked, she saw that I built this big storage shed. She said, I like that. Where did that come from? And Catherine told her that I built it. And she's like, and then she said she wants me to. So okay. I got another business if I want to.
Hey, if you got a website up, we'll plug it at the end there. And one of our first sponsors, is like Designs by Andre,
Actually, that is something that one of these days, if I ever get too bored with music and some of the other things that I'm involved with, I might get into that because I love to do that. I think everybody should have creative outlets besides what they do for their bread and butter, I guess you'd say.
So you had a highlight. You basically, a few days ago, you got to go to the big hardware store, and that was pretty much it.
That was it, man.
Until
that was
today.
Until today. This is like a big deal, man. You don't know. This is like, I don't want to say Christmas because, Christmas, but it's right up there with, right up there with those other holidays, birthdays, Christmas.
Oh, man. Well,
Halloween.
you are a musical treasure, and I'll be honest, there's trepidation about, steward this man well. We got a national heritage here we need to make sure to take care of. So,
thank you.
So, I'd love to start with just your journey. There's so much to get into, but tell me about growing up in Minneapolis in the 60s. What's that like?
God, it's beautiful. First of all, let me just say, growing up in Minneapolis in the 60s, especially where I grew up, was really, really special. And, thanks to social media, you kind of get an opportunity to connect with people. And recently somebody put out, and oddly enough, they put it out with a picture of Prince, which is weird because he really didn't grow up in that neighborhood. So it was really ironic that that was there. But anyway, a lot of people had, gone back and forth and were talking about how it was to grow up in that, in that neighborhood. And basically what it was the projects is what they call the projects, which is a bunch of units all connected. And, each unit had like a courtyard but everybody knew everybody. And the interesting thing was, it was the 60s, which was kind of the height of civil rights and all the different things. And there was a lot of crazy, things going on. But the interesting thing is in the projects, nobody really got caught up in that. There was some racism and racist acts that happened. One happened with myself in particular and my family a couple of times. But for the most part, it was beautiful because there was every culture living there, literally. White, black, Puerto Rican, every kind of anything, Native American was all represented. And everybody we had so much fun. Not only that, you're talking about camping and is where we're at right now, is that everybody every summer would all go to the same camp, summer camp. And so it was just a beautiful way to grow up and a beautiful way to really connect with people. And it really wasn't until, we moved away from that area and my mother got a house and we moved into where we ultimately wound up growing up, as a teen. Where, because that community in that neighborhood was literally probably 80% black, maybe 90% black. So it just went from, where it was every culture to just black culture. And so, it just became a different kind of representation. But, all of it was really a beautiful way to grow up because even in that environment, it was a cool environment to grow up with because you got to see the world from yet a different vantage point, because growing up at the projects is one vantage point. Growing up in an all-black neighborhood is a whole different vantage point. So you just get, it's a different perspective on life, on the world, on people, on interaction with different people.
And what is Minneapolis? Is Minneapolis, I've actually never been to Minneapolis in Minnesota, but is that considered sort of like classic Midwest? Like, would that be like, if I were to go to Minneapolis in the 60s, would it be like a slice of Americana? Like, you're going to see like soda shops and like, like the down, like it's when you think of the American town.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. First of all, definitely it's all of that. It's probably, to whatever degree a prototype. They did the Mary Tyler Moore show there. So,
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So, it's a big, it represents, it's literally the middle of America. And I think that, has a lot to do with, people talk about the Minneapolis sound and all of that, and and everybody thinks that it's this and thinks that it's that, and I think I probably might have a pretty good handle on.
Oh, we're gonna get to the Minneapolis sounds.
Yeah.
Don't you worry.
So, but it was a beautiful place to grow up in the 60s. Absolutely.
So I'm curious, you're in the 60s, you're in, middle school, high school and stuff. Who are you jamming to? Like, who's huge? Like, and who's like the artist that everyone's listening to and you're like, and growing up, you're like, man, this is really just, I can't get enough of this. This is impacting you.
Oh man, it's really hard to say again, I'm not trying to be, esoteric and bizarre or anything, but because, I'm the youngest of 6 and the beautiful thing about that is you have older siblings and they all love music. And so they all had their own record collections. And so I was the beneficiary of a culmination of all of those different collections. So, and my dad was a musician. And so I kind of got to listen to all of it. And I was really, really obviously, musically inclined, just, luckily and blessed and knock on wood, gifted, just, I could always play music.
So it was a natural thing for you. You kind of just, I've heard people say some people music just makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, is that thing where you just naturally were gifted at?
Yeah. It's just, I'm not going to say I didn't work at it, but, I could always play the drums. I could always play the bass. I could always, when I picked up the guitar, I basically could play it. I don't ever remember going, how do you do this? I don't remember.
See, that's
that.
interesting because you and Prince are known as having, you play so many different instruments. And that's something I was like, I play 17 instruments. Are there just folks you think where you play one, if it makes sense to you, you just somehow pick all these? It's so fascinating to me. I have so much trouble playing, the triangle. And so, which I've gotten better at, but, it's an equilateral triangle too for our nerdy listeners out there. But do you think so you picked up a bass and you were like trained yourself, but it's similar to guitar but different, right? It's
well, yeah. Strings and and the shape and all of that kind of stuff. But
the strings and the shape.
But that's But my dad was a musician. He was a bass player, and so so it was there, and oddly enough, because it's like huge, and I was like a little kid, so I would have to play on a stool. But it was just, it was like, I don't want to say easy, but it's like, it's like, and it's like, wow, but I used to watch. I think, the one thing about me is I'd watch him play, and I would see what he would do, and then I would just mimic it, and once you figure out, there's these things called frets. Well, upright bass doesn't have any frets, but and I would just ask, and he would tell me about it, but he wouldn't want me to play. He wouldn't let me play it at all. I'd have to wait for him to leave, and then I'd play it. But I just saw how he did it, and and had an ear for music. So it's like, so you just have to space your fingers in order to make it sound right. And so once you space your fingers, and the next thing you know, you got it figured out. So, yeah.
So, all right, but it's the 60s. There's so much great music coming out of time, and I'm also, I want to make a note to come back to this because I know in the 60s, Mr. Tom Jones was big.
Oh, yeah.
And it looks like you got to work with Tom Jones later. So
yeah.
I'm curious because my mom went to a Tom Jones concert and told me that she'd never seen so many undergarments thrown at a man.
I got to tell you, man, Tom Jones is one of the coolest dudes I've ever met. I have the coolest Tom Jones story ever.
Well, that's great. Let's hear it.
Okay. He picked me out of, I don't even know why he picked me, but he had, somebody rang me up and said, Tom Jones wants to work with you. And I was like, okay, and he wants to meet you, come to his house. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I got his address and all that. And it was in, Bel Air or something like that. So I drive out there, and I get there, and he comes, hey, I'm like, hey, and it's like, we sit down, and he starts playing me some music, and I'm listening to it, and he's like, something like this, I really like to, get involved in playing, something. Here's some other stuff, and what do you think about this, and and I'm like, I'm listening, and I'm going, and I'm listening to all these different things he's playing me, and I'm kind of getting some ideas going, but I'm smelling something, I'm smelling this smell, right? It's like just. I can't really quite put my finger on it. And I said, finally I asked him, I said, Tom, what's that smell? He said, what? Does it stink? I said, no. It's not. It's just, I haven't smelled it. What is that? I've never smelled it. It was just, it's fascinating. He's like, I don't know, And so he's like, and he's going on, and and I'm listening to some other stuff, and we start talking. And I was like, God, what? You got to find out what that smell is. He's like, what? And he's like, I'm like, he doesn't know what I'm talking about. And so we're talking, and he shows me around the house, and in the kitchen there's like sort of there's like a pond or something with a little bridge that you walk over to get from the one room to the kitchen. It's like, and then I see some other parts of it, and it's just this amazing house. Then I was like, I know what that smell is. He's like, what? That's the smell of money. That's why I never smelled it before. Because anyway, it was just, and we wound up getting to be really, really good friends. We wound up working together, and then we did, when we finally did work together, it wound up being in Virginia Beach, because his record company wanted Teddy Riley, who was really hot at the time, because their whole thing is, it's always got to be with whoever's the hottest, whatever. And, and so they wanted me to work with him, with Tom Jones. But Tom Jones was adamant about the song that I had written sort of just the way that it was. He didn't want it to be changed. So it was just a weird thing. But we all flew out to Virginia Beach to work with Teddy Riley, and we wound up having to wait because he was busy. And so I wound up, and then Leon Silvers was there, and I always I'd never met him, and I'd heard all about him because, Jody and they were involved and had to have a daughter together. And so I always wanted to meet him, and every time I would get there, they said, oh, he just left. So it's like, so we wound up being there for 3 days. Tom was with his son Mark was managing at the time. And so we wound up, me, him, and Mick Murphy from the System, just wound up hanging out for 3 days and hanging out with Tom Jones. Hearing Tom Jones' story for 3 days was just priceless. I mean, it was really, really priceless. And, he was just really, really super, super humble, super cool. And we, oddly enough, we went into, you talking about the panties and all of that. We went into a restaurant, right, in Virginia Beach, and it was like this big sort of, I guess it was some sort of fancy restaurant. I don't know. I mean, I'd never been to Virginia. Well, I'd been there, but never, in that capacity. Usually, when I would go there, it was, when we were in, when I was in Prince's band, and we'd just go in and usually in a limo, and we'd go to this gig and do the gig, and then we'd leave in a plane, So you never really get to see the city. But I was there in a different capacity, and being there this time, it was really interesting because we were with Teddy Riley, and he had an entourage of about 10 folks. And then it was me and Mick, and then obviously Tom and his son. And, first the entourage went in, and everybody was like looking, everybody was like, what are all these people? And everybody, you could hear all the grumbling going on. And then Tom walks in, and people are like, oh, and it was like, it's Tom Jones. And then we all sat down, and this woman came up, and she said, Tom, oh, do you remember me? I threw you the pennies. And I remember Tom looked over at me, and his eyes were huge. He was like, I don't remember that.
How old was Tom at
Hilarious.
this point?
Tom is sort of ageless. I have no idea.
Because I think he's got to be around 80 now.
It's hard to tell. I mean, because to me,
he sounds amazing still.
He's still. I mean, when we did the session, I got to tell you, man. There's only been a few times that I've really kind of had my mind blown with singers that they just automatically sound like a record. It's weird. As a record producer, you usually have to work, and there's all these different sort of anecdotes that you kind of have to pull out to try to get the performance from the different artists that you work with. But when Tom Jones started singing, it was just like, I mean, everybody, because it was, the room was full. I mean, I was there, Leon was there. Wow. He finally made it, and he was there, and Teddy was there, and the whole entourage, all the different people were all there, and he started singing, and it was just like, it was like, how do you say, excuse me, but it's a little,
Mr. Jones.
Yeah, Mr. Jones, it's not quite, you need to do.
You're like,
no.
It's like, I sang Thunderball.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to work. You probably saw Thunderball as a kid, and then you're like, I got to work.
Yeah, but I eventually seen it like a billion times, but I was more familiar with, for whatever reason, because it was like I must have been like a toddler, but it was like Delilah.
Delilah.
Delilah. Love that song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
but anyway, that was just unbelievable.
He has some songs, or She's a Lady. I mean, some of them are hard to like. The lyrics seem so hard to hear now. Yeah. But man, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's Tom Jones. Man, Tom Jones.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Tom, if you're watching, I'm sure you are. You got to come camping with us sometime.
Yeah, that would be. You should do it, Tom. Where is it?
See?
Yeah.
Listen to your producer. All right. Once the pandemic ends, though. Yeah. All right. So I want to go back to your child a little bit. So you've got 6 siblings?
6, yeah. Well,
6
5
siblings, or 5 siblings. Okay. And then music's important to you. Your dad's a musician.
Right.
And then when did your musical career start? Would you say, was it high school? When did you start getting around all these guys that would become ultimately these architects of this Minneapolis sound?
It started with when we moved, and I started 7th grade, and I didn't know anybody, and and I saw this kid, this really quirky little kid that because I really the gym teacher, who was the guy who was kind of commandeering sort of everybody is herding the cats, and I really didn't know anybody. I didn't know that I didn't really like the school. I didn't like the environment. I wasn't really happy about anything, so I was a little bit I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, and so I was just sort of had an attitude, and the guy was giving me a whole lot of stuff about like I wasn't moving fast enough, and and I was just sort of mumbling, bad words under my breath, but loud enough that he could hear them.
Good. Passive aggressive.
Yeah,
nice.
And because I was always that kid. So I looked on, and and he told me to go once he gave me my class slip or whatever it was. And he said, go sit, go stand against the wall. Girls are on one side, boys are on the other side. So I looked down the row, and I looked, and I saw this kid, and I thought, let me go stand next to this kid. He looks interesting. So I went up, and I said, hey, how you doing? I'm Andre. And he said, I'm Prince. I said, Prince? He said, yeah. I said, it's an interesting name, And so I said, what do you do, Prince? He said, I play music. I said, oh, so do I. He said, you do? I said, yeah, you do. I said, what do you play? He said, well, I play piano and guitar. He said,
you're like 13, right, at this point?
I think either 12. It might have actually been even 12. I think, 12 or 13, but somewhere right around there. But he said that he asked me what I played, and I, at that point I played saxophone. I played all the horns. I played saxophone, trumpet, trombone, drums, and then bass, because my dad was a bass player. So we we got into that whole thing, and I think he didn't believe me. I don't know. I mean, in retrospect, just thinking of it right now, I think he probably didn't believe me when I said that, because I know I didn't believe him. I see, yeah, right. I was like, sure you do. And then he said, well, you should come over to my dad's house and jam. And I was like, okay. So after we went, and he was like adamant about wanting to, know what classes I had and all that kind of stuff, which was interesting, because I was like, he was just, he's an odd kid. I was like, this kid is a little different. So we wound up going over to his dad's house and jamming, and he wanted to play the piano, and he was amazing on the piano, and and I was playing. His dad had a large scale ukulele, which was kind of basically like a bass,
And his dad was an incredible musician, right?
I mean, well, that's a whole nother. I mean, I can, that's a whole nother story. But we wound up jamming and going through that whole thing, and but his dad was an amazing musician. His dad, played the piano like, really, to be honest with you, his dad played the piano like nobody I'd ever seen, probably except Prince. The only person that I think, and Prince, back then was really good, but his dad was just unbelievable. His dad was just it's hard to even explain, we would sit and watch his father play, and I think Prince felt like he made him, but I wanted to be there because it was just unbelievable to watch his dad just go through his whole thing, and then he would talk to us, and so basically kind of give us a sermon, but he would play, and it was just he was really into rock. Rachmaninoff, the pianist, and he would always talk about him and talk about if you really wanted to be a good musician and a real musician, you needed to do this, and he'd tell you needed to do that, and it was really good, refreshing for me to hear, because my father was a musician, but my father really didn't talk to me about music or playing music at all. And in fact, I don't think he really wanted me to be a musician. My dad was like an inventor and an engineer and all kinds of other stuff. So.
So you're playing piano and ukulele at Prince's house.
His dad's house, yeah.
His dad's house. And y'all started a lasting friendship there, right? Was that the beginning?
Yeah, that was the beginning. We wound up, really after that, we kind of, we became best friends. We were kind of inseparable. People used to tease us. My mom used to say, they'd say we were hooked at the hip, and, all these crazy jokes she would crack. But we started the band and in the music room, and and that's kind of how it started.
And that band was called?
Well, it depends.
I know you've had some branding over the years.
Yeah, we had a few different names, but ultimately it became Grand Central. Yeah, we went through some machinations, and
not to be confused with Grand Funk Railroad, right?
No, not to be confused. Although that's partly where it came from. A lot of people thought that it came from Graham Central Station, but that band, we had our name before that band, came about. We were actually doing Sly and the Family Stone when Larry Graham was still in Sly and the Family Stone. So So anyway, but people would always, call us Grand Central Station, and we'd get mad and say, no, it's Grand Central. See, I can't even. But no, it was fun.
So, you hear these stories, and obviously, a lot of it's show and personas you cultivate, but did you have any inkling that when you met this skinny little kid named Prince in 7th grade, that he was going to turn out to be not only just who he was in total entirety, like y'all are passing tapes, you're jamming together, and you read, everyone knows, he wears from Prince to stilettos and the perfumes and the just the everything. You're like, do you look at that and go, oh man, does money and fame just change you, or was he always a weird dude, or both?
I wore clear pants, so I don't know what to tell you. I think we're all guilty, of.
Okay, so you had your own moments.
I had my own moments from his perspective. It's hard for me to, we were kind of influenced by the same people, and the same artist at that point, because we grew up, at the same time, and actually lived in the same house. So
that's right. He lived. So why did Prince live with you?
That's a good question. I think a lot of people, when they came to my house and sort of, hung around, me, because I was kind of a weird guy. Okay. You tease, Prince, but I kind of wore some strange clothes back then myself. But yeah, no, I think, why did he come to live with us? I was a free spirit, and my mom sort of, being the youngest of 6, I kind of had, free reign to live my life kind of how I wanted. And I think what that, people who came around and, would come, and I had a crazy record collection, and I was sort of, hey, let's do this, hey, let's do that. And,
so because he lived with his dad, right?
No, he lived with his mom.
With his mom. Okay,
yeah.
So but he was. Oh, you guys were over his dad's house.
Yeah, it was just. Yeah, he
got it.
Yeah.
But lived with his mom, and then he was just like, all right, I'm gonna come live with you.
Not quite that. Okay. It was a little more than that.
You had a full house, I imagine. You had 5 siblings, and I mean.
Well, everybody wasn't there.
Oh, okay.
They weren't. The Anderson house was a very interesting house. Because there was a lot of interesting, colorful folks coming and going, which was part of the allure of my mother's house. It was a very interesting time. And my mom was, I think at the time I think she was at the Y at the time. So, she managed. She was the director of the YWCA, and then actually became the Ruth Hawkins Center, and then she ran a lot of that kind of stuff. So she ran a community center. So our house was kind of like a community center, and so it was just a great place to come. It was a great energy, I think, and I think that had a lot to do with it. And to be honest with you, when I moved into the neighborhood, nobody's parents wanted their kids hanging around anywhere around my mom's house. Definitely not around me, because I think my family and myself kind of came with a little bit of a reputation. And so I think that became a little bit of the catalyst of him sort of, that whole, thing that, people tell you that you shouldn't do. And then the next thing you knew, you really want to do it. So I think that had a lot to do with him coming in.
If I recall, you all tried the Step Brothers thing of, living in room, and that didn't work out. So he descended to the basement, and they put you in the attic? Yeah.
Not quite like that, but
Okay.
I suppose that's close enough. But it didn't work out. I mean, it was great at first, but he was more of a neat person, and I was more of I was the person that I was. I was a free spirit, and was like, I was wanting to play music I had built my own stereo system, so I had speakers all over the place. So, I used to like to listen to a lot of different crazy stuff and really loud. And, he was at that point, he was a very reserved, kid, so when you talk about the high-heeled stuff, you would have never known that then, because he was not like that at all. I mean, not that he wasn't, eccentric and unique and had a unique sort of, his own, unique vibe. But, he was very laid back, when you come into an environment like my mother's house, you're going to change. Some of the people
I'm curious. What a cool place this sounds like.
Yeah, some of the people that came around, my brothers, it's a different kind of a place. And, you see movies about places like that. You see characters about places like that. Like, say, for instance, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Superfly.
Curtis Mayfield, right?
Well, he did the music,
That's
but
right.
the guy that played Superfly, well, if you ever get a chance, that's basically who my brother was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, looked like him, dressed like him, acted like him. If I didn't know better, I think that they might have got, he might have been the prototype for that character, because my brother was no joke. He was like, everybody in the neighborhood knew him, and you never had to worry about it. If you were related to us or you knew us, you didn't have to worry about anything, because if you did anything to anybody in our family, might be a problem.
Might be a problem.
And my other brother wasn't really far from that either. He'd just, anyway, it's just that's a whole nother story in and of itself.
So you and Prince are living together essentially, and you guys create this band Grand Central, and walk us through the career. So because that band obviously has a few names, a few iterations. You start competing in Battle of the Bands, right? And how does Grand Central turn into ultimately launching you and Prince?
Well, really didn't launch me and Prince. It kind of launched Prince, but in an odd sort of way, because we had obviously, Grand Central had done really all the work, as a band. We'd played, and we became the hottest band in the city. We were playing everywhere. Morris's mother was our manager, and we were playing everywhere.
I remember you were very impressed with Morris's mom.
Yeah, she was. beautiful. I'm sure she's still beautiful. I haven't seen her for a while, but everybody who met Morris's mom fell in love with her. You know, she was like Pam Grier, only I'd say even more beautiful. I mean, and I think Pam Grier is just gorgeous, but
Did Morris know how much you appreciated his?
I think Morris was he was a different kind of dude back then. Obviously, you get fame and you have your own.
So he didn't have someone carry the mirror back then, and he was not the Morris Day from the time that the Bird, Jungle Love.
No. He was. I mean, Morris was the most amazing drummer. Like I can still play drums, but back then I used to really consider myself a drummer because I could play. I had a drum set. There was a drum set in our house and all that kind of stuff, and I could play. My cousin was an amazing drummer. He's still an amazing drummer, but once I heard Morris, I was like, oh, I don't need to play drums anymore. I literally stopped playing for a while because, it's like I always thought, well, until somebody can play better than me, I'm going to need to show people how to play stuff. But when Morris came along, I was like, I don't need to show this guy nothing. But Morris, he sang. At first, he didn't sing anything, but he wanted to sing. He was adamant about wanting to sing something. So he said, okay, what do you want to sing? And he wanted to sing "Love Won't Let Me Wait" by is it Major Lance or Major Harris? But we would let him come and sing that, and I think I think he did that and maybe Me and Mrs. Jones, and that was about it. He just wanted to come and sing these ballads, these like sort of love ballads, and he'd come out there and he'd do this thing, and our percussionist would jump on the drums, but that's it. There was no Bird, there was no nothing beyond that, nothing where you had to get out there and do any kind of dance moves. So it's really interesting. It was interesting for me to see him sort of transition into what he ultimately wound up doing, because he does it well. He does it great. He's really, really good at it. So,
And so would you say that, so you guys are the hottest band in the city. Is that the real beginnings of the Minneapolis sound?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's how it started. Because, the Minneapolis sound, just so, it's understood, is that, Grand Central, we were just us. We were just sort of me, Prince, William, Terry Jackson, Morris, and my sister. And my sister played keys. And we didn't have horns. We didn't have a horn section. And the other bands that we were in competition with, the Flight Times and all those groups, they had actually horn sections. So we'd have to do battle of the bands with horn sections. So what we would do is we'd have my sister play horn parts on her keyboard, on her organ. So and so she'd do that and kind of compensate. And so what it became like sort of as keyboards went from organ to synthesizers. They obviously had synthesizers that had these sort of cheesy horn patches. So we'd have her play that, and depending on, whatever the song was, if we were writing, if it was one of Prince's songs or one of my songs, they would have her playing a horn patch that was like a horn pattern. And so that became ultimately sort of a vibe, and so that's what we did, and that kind of became the sound. So rather than having horns playing it, and then other people started doing it as well, but just the way we did it, I know that one of the things that I know I came up with at the time, because it became a controversial thing, but was the whole and all of that, and that was something that all of us used to do, is like hitting a kind of a seventh or a ninth to just do like a horn hit, because it just it has an impact, and all of that stuff became sort of synonymous with it. But but the thing is that I realized that I never thought about, the part that I played in creating any of that stuff, because I just, I'd always get into other things and move on, and I kind of got away from it, and nobody's ever really been able to sort of recapture that vibe, and and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go back and really do that, because I just finished a new album, and it's really kind of coming back to that and paying homage to those days, because nobody's really done it like that. People sort of have kind of mimicked it, and a lot of people have gotten a lot of credit for for being a part of it, and people that really weren't there when we really kind of came up with it. So it's never quite what we were originally, because there's a lot that goes into it that a lot of people don't really understand. They just think that it's like a little, sort of chintzy James Brown guitar lick, and then it's got to have that that kind of but there's way more to it than that. And so I thought, what, instead of just talking about what it is, I'm gonna actually make an album paying homage to that. It's kind of a conceptual kind of thing that really kind of goes into the heart and soul of what that was really all about. And so I finished it, and I was kind of trying to wait for the air of this pandemic and the elections and all that stuff to sort of subside, to sort of get on the other side of that, because it's really kind of a fun album, and I think that it would be a great sort of spiritual release. So that's
awesome.
That's what I'm up to.
So with Grand Central, so you guys are playing, and now was that the band? Because you actually got to open right for, I think, one night. We're Cool in the Gang, right?
Yeah.
And then Rick James as well, right?
Well, Cool in the Gang, yeah, that was one. That's where we met Sheila E., which was interesting.
Oh, what a drummer, and beautiful.
Yeah. Well, she's an amazing drummer, and we definitely thought she was hot at the time. I thought she was, both Prince and I thought she was hot. We were, both going,
So you got the look.
But we got kicked off of that tour, before it even got started. And then, but wound up with the Rick James tour, which wound up being
that had to be crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy, and it was fun. Because for two guys from Minneapolis, who really, when you think about it, it was only a few years before that we were, in my mom's kitchen eating government cheese.
And Rick James is like huge at this point, right?
Oh yeah, he was huge. I mean, I'm talking like, we had never seen up close and personal that level of production and all of that. And so for us to see it really from the inside, and we, both Prince and I, our attitude was like, has always been, whenever we'd step on the stage, and I know it was my attitude, and I know that I had a little bit of an influence on everybody, but my attitude was always, let's rip their freaking head off. So that was always my attitude. And and I got sort of because everybody always thought I had a bad attitude, but I didn't. It was just being focused, because I just think that in this business you have to be focused. You have to you never know. I mean, this is your shot. And I would always tell that to Prince, this is our shot, man. We're getting, this is like, this is what we, all the stuff that, I'd talk about the Flame, and, I'd bring up a couple of names of some of the places we used to play, the Elks, and say, unless we want to go back there, this is our shot. We need to knock this out of the park. So, so that was the attitude. And Rick James was it was like, it's like, if we can basically hand him his hat, then we can keep moving up, and that was the attitude. I mean, unfortunately, I didn't get to the place that they got to do the Rolling Stone thing. I mean, unfortunately, I guess that didn't work out so good. That was the first show they did without me. I guess it didn't work out so good.
Which is so strange in that bring up my amazing mother. She saw them once open for the Rolling Stones and got booed off stage.
Yeah.
And that was the one time she's like, that was the first time I saw Prince on stage, was before the Rolling Stones, and he got booed off.
That was the first gig they did without me.
See, you are the one who's responsible.
No. I mean, it's funny because somebody said, I'm trying to think, one of the band members said, if I wish you would have been there. If you would have been there, I'm like, I was like, if I would have been there, they would have thrown stuff at me too. I said, I might have thrown it back, but that's the only difference. Is that,
now, you mentioned in another interview that, one of the things about, I always like highlighting fame, because everyone wants to be famous. And I realize that there's some things that happen with that, right? Mm-hmm. You mentioned people would follow you guys everywhere, right? I mean, and you mentioned a story about having to be chased through a hotel. Can you tell us that one? Yeah, no, that was in Colorado, I believe.
We had a guy named Ted Cohen who's still in the business. He's still, but he was our road manager. But it was one of the first times we had ever got mobbed, I mean, because I know I had got mobbed. I think I might have got mobbed before Prince got mobbed, and it was before we even did a show. We were in fact, we were here in California, and he was doing an in-store, and I was there, but obviously it wasn't my record. It was his record, and I was there, and he was signing autographs and doing all that kind of stuff, and I was just sort of mulling around, and a couple of girls said, "Well, who are you?" And I was like, I'm just, I'm his friend and I play in the band. They said, well, you play in the band? They said, can I get your autograph? I said, well, it's really not about me. You should just get his autograph. It's his thing. And I'm, but I want to get your autograph. You're in the band, right? I was like, all right, fine. And so I signed, and then said, can I get your autograph too? And I said, all right. Next thing you know, it's like, I'm surrounded by girls and he's over there. And so then they put me behind the thing with him. And so we're both signing autographs. And I'm like, this is not, it's his album. And it was really embarrassing. But anyway, you had asked me a question.
Yeah, well, I remember you said you had to flee, and they kept trying to
Colorado.
Go to a fake hotel or a hotel that you weren't staying at.
Yeah, that was unbelievable. So we were doing the gig in Colorado, and we came off stage, and I don't know if that was a Rick James tour. It might have been right before the Rick James tour, but anyway, we went to our dressing room, and our dressing room was actually in a trailer like this, in fact, a lot like this.
Campfire and everything?
Minus the campfire, and but it was like a trailer, because we were back there getting dressed and all of that, and all of a sudden we heard like a crowd of people, like it sounded like we were surrounded, and we looked out the window and we were surrounded. It was like, and they started moving the trailer, and so our guy came in and said, we got to get you guys out of here. We're like, what? It's like, they're we're surrounded, and so they were kind of tripping out, and so they were like, okay, fine, and basically they were trying to tip the trailer over. It was like literally rocking, and so they had to rush us into the limousine, and so the limousine driver got off and actually hit some people trying to get away, and that became a whole other issue because I think there was a lawsuit and all that kind of stuff. But we got out of there, and so when we drove away, there were like, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 cars following us. I remember one of them was a VW Beetle, was following us, and and Ted said, okay, you know what? I know how we're going to get rid of them. There's like a Holiday Inn up here, and we'll just, have you guys walk in, and and it goes straight through, and we'll meet you on the other side, and and that'll do it. We'll lose them. And so we were like, okay, so pulls up, and we go into this Holiday Inn, and we walk to the other side, and they didn't fall for it. And so they kept following us. So he decided he was going to just physically, try to scare them and make them go away. And so he went and yelled at him, quit following us. And, and he stuck his hand in the Beetle and tried to reach in. whoever was driving the Beetle took off with him hanging out of it and just sped away. And it's like, oh no, and just sped away. And he went flying. They turned or did something and he went flying. And, he got jacked up. And so we had to go collect him and pull him back in the limousine. And we wound up going to our hotel. And then we got the hotel. I think he called ahead and got the hotel security that we ran in and went to our rooms. But
everyone wants to be famous. But
it was crazy. Yeah, not like that.
Man.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't happen anymore to you?
No.
No?
Yeah,
Okay.
Very seldom. But I don't.
It doesn't happen to us either. That's why we are in this non-discreet, white blank bus.
Yeah, part of the reason, I don't know why my phone keeps buzzing, but part of the reason why I moved to California was because I remember my record company saying, when I said I wanted to move to California, and the record executive was like, why would you want to move from Minnesota? In Minnesota, you can be a big fish in a small pond. In California, you'll be a small fish in a big pond. And I was like, I think I like that, because in Minnesota, I couldn't go anywhere. At that time, because it was, there was, the idea of people being, popular and famous at that level just didn't happen in Minnesota at that point, especially black artists. I think there were obviously Bob Dylan, but that's a different kind of reality. But for a black artist at that point, there was just nobody in the community like that. And so me and Prince were kind of, we were like, we were rock stars, I guess, in our own community. And we would go back to my mom's house. And my mom's house was always, people would come from around the world, because they found out that my mom's house was where we used to practice and where we used to live and all that kind of stuff. So
that's weird, isn't that trippy?
Oh, it was very weird. It was very uncomfortable.
Do you have to, when you get to that level where people, even at a level, even in just Minnesota, where people know you so well,
mm-hmm.
do you start having an issue where you meet people and you wonder if they're just trying to be your friend because of who you are and what you've done? Or like, does that make your pre-existing relationships that much more special? Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I still don't have very many friends. I don't really, you said, do you hang out with your friends? I really don't have very many friends.
That's why you go in the hardware store, right?
Yeah, exactly. I've never, Prince, I would consider, a friend. A couple other friends. I had, an older gentleman that was my friend. He passed away not that long ago, but he was my only friend kind of out here that I literally used to hang out with.
Dang, man, we got to hang out, man. Mark and I'll definitely come hang out with you.
No,
we'll get on the calendar with Catherine.
But
we'll go to Trader Joe's.
But yeah, no. To answer the question, because it did get to a point where, you kind of get blindsided, I guess, because you don't realize that, everybody seemed to have an angle, and you don't think about it because by nature you don't think, oh, somebody's got an angle, but then you find out that it is that way. It's either they want, they got this, they want to sing or they want to produce or they want to write or they want
you to hear their mixtape.
Yeah, they want to hear, exactly. And then then you realize, that it's a different kind of thing, and then then it's I've had so many different I've had people try to steal my identity, it goes on and on. The things that actually happen, and business wise, and managers and accountants and agents, and it's the music business is a crazy business on every level, but when you have success of any kind, it just multiplies because everybody is coming at you. I actually wound up leaving the business, just stop. I was like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore because, for me, I love music as art, and I always consider music, an art form. And I think, I love the idea of conceptualizing musical expression and musical experiences. So it's a different, it's a different kind of thing. So it just pulls me into some different areas, creatively.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you were with Grand Central, and you were on tour with Rick James, and then before you decided to take a break from everything, what happened with that band, and then when did you decide to, from there to when you decided to take a break from the business?
Oof, that's a lot. A lot happened between them. Well, with Prince, because I originally was not going to be in his band. I had thought that he should get somebody else because I never wanted to be in somebody's band.
You wanted to have your own band?
Well, I didn't really want to have my own band. I just wanted to be in an awesome band. Like the Beatles. I was a big, I love the Beatles.
I would be like the Beatles, the biggest band.
Well, but a band, not like somebody's like one guy's band.
Oh, right. You didn't want to be the Revolution. You wanted to be like, you wanted to be George or Ringo,
Well,
Andre.
Something like that. Yeah, something like that. And, and
you're not Ringo, don't worry.
I don't, but I wouldn't mind being Ringo. Ringo's cool. But Catherine loves Ringo, so.
Oh, really? All respect to Ringo.
But no, there's, growing up, there's a lot of bands that we, got into that, they always had their own sort of individuality. And, I was always into that. Because I wrote a lot. In our band in Grand Central, a lot of the members, I'm kind of the one who brought them in. I'm, my sister, the percussionists, Morris, I kind of was very involved in bringing those people into the fold, and so so the idea of a band and all the different things that we did to get us to the point of recording that demo tape that put us in Moon Sound, which is how everything wound up happening. We had worked ourselves to get to that point. So that was that, and then the Rick James thing is so when Prince asked me to be in his band, I was like, well, I'll do it, but maybe it's a 3-album deal, so for your 3 albums, and when that's done, and you're kind of got your thing off and rolling, then I'm gonna go do my thing. And I'd hope that as much as I like to think that I'd helped him, he'd help me and help me get my thing together. But I wound up ultimately having to do it myself. But that was that. So we did the 3 albums and the 3 tours, and obviously I was very involved in all 3 of those albums very much.
Oh, which albums were those?
The first album was called For You.
For You, yeah.
The second album was called Prince, and the third album was called Dirty Mind.
So then and then you signed with, was it Columbia Records?
Yeah.
After that.
Yeah.
And then you wanted to do, and then so you wanted to make. You both were as architects of the Minneapolis sound. I feel like was the label saying, hey, like we want you all to make the same music, or putting pressure on you?
That was the dilemma I got into, because when I I think the thing with Columbia is that when I decided that I wanted to be a solo artist. I really never thought about being a solo artist. I really didn't I didn't think that part of it through so much. But I just called up Columbia and said, hey, listen, I'm André Cymone. I want a record deal. I literally did. And they kind of laughed, I think. They thought that it was a joke. I said, no, I'm serious. I'm André Cymone. And, it's weird because I think sometimes, this is a sort of a revelation I've had, is that sometimes you think people know more about you than they do. And when people say you're full of yourself, I think that's where that comes from somehow or another. But, somehow I thought, that they should know who I was and that they were just going to give me a record deal. But they did. I called them and they said, well, yeah, okay, André Cymone, send us a demo tape and then we'll see, So I was like, okay. And so, so I put the demo tape and, and connected with Owen Husney and said, Owen, listen, I rung up Columbia Records and spoke to them, and they said, send them a demo tape. So here's my demo tape, and so he said, oh, and he said, well, let's put it together in a press kit. And, and so we went there and he said, Andre said that he talked to you, and then here's his press kit. And they said, oh, okay. And so I got a record deal. And so that's how that came about. And yeah, I mean, yeah.
And so you said there's a dilemma is they wanted you to make music that was similar to Prince's.
They did. I mean, I wanted to make rock and roll because I wanted to do something away from it, because I was, obviously, Prince had his vibe and I was very much involved in that, but, nobody looked at it like that. I mean, people just thought, even as it was, people thought, oh, you look like Prince. And I'm like, no. And they said, oh, yeah, you do. You got the same outfit on. And I was like, no. And, oh, you're trying to be like, I'm like, no. I mean, and so everything that I spent, time developing and sort of, kind of honing in on my own sort of style and my own vibe. It's just all of a sudden people were saying, you're trying to be like this guy.
That should be incredibly frustrating considering you two were passing the same tapes around. Like, I mean, that's got to be, I would find that so infuriating.
It was a little bit, it was very, it was insulting. I mean, for me, because, I always prided myself on being extremely individual. Like I said, I didn't want to be in the band because I didn't want to ever, be cast in that kind of a light. But anyway, I mean, it's in some ways it's a blessing, in some ways it's, it's a curse. But, but I did it, and and I wound up doing, instead I did like a space album, living in a
like
new
David
way.
Bowie, you kind of just switched everything. And
it's like, I mean, I wound up having a conversation with somebody. I did a podcast, and somebody was asking me about that, and I was like, I mean, I had to explain to him. I said, think about it. I mean, do you think I was trying to write a hit song with Living in a New Way? I mean, I was just trying to create art, and I never thought about it in terms of making a hit record. I just didn't, I didn't think about it like that. I just thought, this record company is going to give me $250,000 to make an album. And I was, I'm from the projects. $250,000, that's a lot of money. So
this is what,
1980, I think 80 or 81.
That's some good money back then.
Yeah. So I'm thinking,
It's good money now. So.
Yeah, it's good money now.
I'll take one.
Yeah, I'll take it to go. But I'm thinking, I'm going to create something really different. So I mean, and that's exactly what you're not supposed to do. And so they gave me a hard time, and they didn't promote it, and they were like, why don't you just do something like, and they'd cut out the top 10 R&B, chart and say, do something like this or something like you did where you came from, and I was like, no, I want to, I mean, and I would always make this remark.
You're a rebel, man.
I would always remark, I'm not going to I'm an artist, and you're not going to put a mustache on my Mona Lisa. I would always say that. And they were like, so we just didn't get along. And finally I said, well, let me off the label. And they wouldn't let me off the label. They were like, no. Mm-mm. So I was stuck. And so I said, well, then I'm going to go make hits somewhere else. So I wound up meeting Jody Watley, and we wound up working on an album, and she won a Grammy Award for Best New Artist and had I think 7, top 5, couple number ones, hit after hit, bunch of hits. I wound up doing the Adamant, Room at the Top.
Adamant. Was that Goody Two Shoes?
No, I didn't do. I wish I had done Goody Two Shoes. I mean, I wanted to do. I mean, I wanted to do things a lot different, but he was adamant about He was adamant about having me do what more or less what I did with Jody. He wanted to do a really super pop album. So, and he was into the whole conceptual artist kind of thing too, like I was. He was, very much into the realm of concept art, music as concept art, which is a different thing. I mean, it's creative and it's artistic, but it's not sort of, where you take yourself so serious or take what you do so serious that it's got to be this or it's got to be that. It's just art.
So you start making. So this kind of moves you into your producing, right? That's so. At this point, you're producing. Right. You get to work with all these different artists, and then meanwhile, so you're producing these hits, and then Prince's star is rising. Oh, yeah. Are y'all keeping in touch?
A little bit. He would reach out to me. Every now and again, he would call me up and say, "You got to come listen to this." It was same stuff he used to do when we were kids. He would say, "You got to come listen to something." I'm like, I'm in California. Well, I'm in town. I'll have my driver pick you up, and it's like, and I'd look out the window and there'd be like a limo there.
That's just how
like,
do you
okay.
It's just a weird friendship because it's like you start on the same thing, and it's just and you chose it seems like almost a more artistic, not integrous, but it's you just look, I'm not gonna do what I don't want to do, and I love that, and I just like. Do friends send their drivers to get their friends? Like it's just like
Yeah, no, it was definitely.
I guess Mark's technically my driver, so I have to.
It was definitely weird. It was I'll never forget one of the weirder moments was when the Grammy Awards, when Jody, we were going to the Grammy Awards, and I'll never forget, I was staying for whatever reason at the Le Parc Hotel, and found out that Prince was staying at the Le Parc, so we were both staying there, and I'll never forget, we were both in limousines and we were leaving. And I was in the limo, and this limo pulled up next to me, and the window came down, and Prince was in it. And I rolled the window down. He's like, he said, "I like that song." And I was like, "What song?" He said, "That song you got out by Jody. I like that." He said, "You need to put some changes in it, though." And I was like, "But it's number one." I don't think it needs any changes.
Oh my gosh.
We're on our way to the Grammy Awards.
Gotta make some changes to it.
So, yeah, no, it was.
Thanks,
we used to have a lot of fun.
That competition probably helped you both out, though. Probably drove you to.
No, it was. I think the thing is, with he and I, we were always, fun competition, competitively. But yeah, I think people always put it in a different place. They put it like some sort of weird jealous competition. It was never like that. It was just because we both loved doing what we did. And I think the spirit of that was what would always come through. And like he had when he did Sign of the Times, he had I was at a club and I was at a club with Jody, and Jody's best friend was this guy named Jermaine Stewart, who had a record out. He had a song out called "We Don't Have to Take Our Clothes Off to Have a Good Time." It was a hit. But we were out at a club. There was a club at the bottom of the Beverly Center, and this guy comes up to me. He's like, "Prince wants you to come to his house." Obviously, Prince is obviously my friend, and we grew up and all the history and blah blah blah. But Jody had never met him, and Jermaine never met him, and they were like, "Prince wants you to come to his house." And I'm kind of like,
ask me himself,
Yeah, they're kind of tripping, and I'm kind of like, I'm like, I'm kind of thinking why, but then come on, and I said, well, I have some people with me, bring them, they can come too. I was like, you guys want to? They were like, yeah. So I was like, okay, so we go, and they drive us up to, some hills in Beverly Hills, and we get to this house, and Prince comes, he opens up the door, Andre, because we hadn't seen each other for a while. And he's like, you got to hear this album. And I said, Prince, this is Jody, and and Jermaine. Hi, how you doing? And he's like, hope you don't mind. I just want to steal him for a minute, and if you guys could just chill. He had a cook, and she can make you anything you want, and so we go upstairs, and he starts playing me Sign of the Times, and it's like, amazing. Amazing.
Was he playing you that track, Sign of the Times, or was
he playing the whole album? And well, it was a 4-album set at the time. So we were there. This is already, think about it. We're at the club.
Wow.
So it's already late. And so, it's like, so I'm sitting in there listening. I remember because in the room there was this huge clock on the wall, like just oversized clock, and we're just sitting on, these sort of pillows of some sort, and we're just listening to stuff, and it's like amazing. And so I listened to all this stuff, and when he played Dorothy Parker, I had to stop and say, okay, that's like beyond funky, beyond everything. That's like one of the dopest songs I've ever heard. He's like, but wait till you hear this, this other song. And so he keeps going, and he plays it, and he goes on, and this other song. And so I listen to all of this stuff, and it's like, and I'm blown away, but I'm like, I said, my only thing is that there's just too much. it's like, like you had me at, Dorothy Parker. I think Housequake was on it, and the
Starfish and Coffee.
Starfish.
That's my.
I was like,
and the Cross is actually.
yeah, the Cross. You had me at, I said, and then, and it went on, and I was like, just too much. I said, you need to I said, first of all, you just released an album. I said, you might want to give the people. He said, I can't. I gotta get stuff out there. As soon as I write, I gotta get it out. And it's like, well, you should cut it down a little bit, because that's way too much stuff. I mean, it's like, what's that? He said 4 albums. I said, well, maybe less than that. And he wound up cutting it down a little bit, but
wow.
But it was an amazing album.
I'm curious, as an artist too, because everyone is supportive of each other and you all want each other to succeed, but are there friends of yours, and I guess with Prince too, when you hear some, especially Sign of the Times, because that's arguably his best album. There's a world where that, Purple Rain, and 1999 are probably tied, right? Right? But you hear that stuff, and do you ever go, man, that's awesome, and oh, why didn't I write that? Like I get that way with so much stuff. I'm like, that's amazing. Dang it, is that?
The only thing that I remember hearing, because I can write. I think I'm a better musician now than I ever was. So
That's
I can
awesome.
write a lot of stuff like that. If I, I'm not saying that, I can write like Prince or anything like that. I don't want to ever say anything like that. But the one song that I heard on the radio when I was out here that I was like pissed. It's like, why wasn't he writing stuff like that when I was in the band? Because I would have loved to, perform it. I mean, because he and I used to have so much fun performing together. Even in Grand Central, we had a blast. We used to, we had a, very kind of chemistry on stage because we were friends, and in like, sometimes, on the tour, sometimes I would just push him out of the way, shove him out of the way, and I would just sing the song.
Well, it's probably not difficult because he, the wind could do that, right? He's about 100 pounds.
Hey, Prince is he might be little, but he was a very strong dude. You're not gonna, he's not, he's
but
not
how good
some
is your
kind of
balance in heels,
damn good. I mean, he'll kick your behind in them heels playing some basketball.
Is he that good a basketball player?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
I've heard the rumors and I didn't know, and I was like, because he's 5'3" or whatever, or 5'4", and I'm like,
oh yeah, no, I kid you not. I mean, we used to have vicious games that even one of the I'd only made it to Paisley Park a couple of times when he was alive, but one of the times when I was there, he tried to get me to play because we used to have knockdown, drag out. I mean, we were competitive on every level: basketball, music, tennis. We used to play tennis a lot. And literally we'd be playing for hours, and because it would be I'd win, he'd win, I'd win, and we'd go back and forth. So when I went to Paisley, he had a basketball court in there, and he was like, we used to have this running thing because it's like, it's like hit it and quit it kind of. I probably shouldn't say that because it's gonna get me in trouble, but
we can edit anything out though.
but yeah, it would be like we would play, and as soon as you did whatever the devastating move was or the devastating shot, that's probably the best time to quit. And he tried to guard me, and I shook him and busted a 3, and I was like, he's like, oh, no. I said, no, that's it. I'm done. I'm gonna start sweating if I do anything else. He's like, no, you gotta play. You gotta run it back. I was like, oh no, because we would always have this thing about that was it. It was like, whoever, it was kind of like that was the rule. Whoever did the coolest thing first and quit, you can't top that.
Right,
so you got to do that, and then you got to leave because then And so he was like, you got to run it back. I'm like, no, got to go.
Man, so you're producing, and then ultimately you decide to say, hey, look, I'm going to take a break. Mm-hmm. I'm going to step away. Did people think that was crazy? Were you, or was this just something you said, hey, I need to do this for me?
It was just one of those things where my life had, my personal life had caught up to me because I had, kids and and it was just, I mean, the music business is a crazy business anyway. But I was working my behind off, and my kids I wasn't there for my kids, really. It was really what it came down to. I was at the height of everything. I was like, producing and working, but I had, an agent, I had a manager, I had an accountant, and, I mean, all of that kind of stuff. And they were, everybody was making money, and it was like, I just remember, I remember just, it was like $35,000 a month was flying out the window. My house payment was like $8,000 a month. It was just like insane. Yeah, it was insane and everything. And I'm like, and I had to keep working to do all of that, to pay for this house, to pay for that house, to pay for this car, to pay for that car, to pay for this and that and this and that. And, and my kids were growing up, and, and this was happening and I was missing it, and that was happening and I was missing it. And finally I was like, you know what? I'm not doing it anymore. I'm just not doing it. I can't, my son got in trouble, and I was, I had to be there for him. My daughter got in trouble. I had to be there. I just said, I'm going to stop this. I had to stop for a minute. And so I did. So I just stopped and I went to do whatever I could do with my kids, and started trying to, pull that back in and become a father. And that's what I did. I became a father and a dad, and then had more kids. And I'm a father and a dad, and I try to, be the best father that I can, and still do music.
That's awesome. That must have been tough at some points to leave it behind, but ultimately, I imagine, like, no doubt, just the right thing to do at that time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it wasn't hard at all, but, I guess the one thing that was hard about it was because, if you're a person of integrity, and you, and, people, sign you to do deals and to do publishing deals and things like that. You have to honor that kind of stuff. And I felt bad about some of those things because, I had, signed a couple of pretty major publishing deals, and other deals, I mean, when your family calls, especially your kids, it's hard to explain to business people things of that nature. And, and I'm sure that I probably got blackballed and eightballed and every other kind of, by just saying I'm not doing it anymore, but at the end of the day, it was about, my children needed me, and I needed to be there for them. And that was really what it was all about. And I just really, just became a family man, and watched, and other people, and I still try to help other people because I actually had a recording studio, and I used to let young artists come there and just record for free. And I would help them and nurture their whole thing. And, just did that for a number of years. Worked with a lot of really kind of different kind of artists. I worked with this Kuwaiti artist, which was unbelievable, because the project, and it, brought me back to an interesting thing, because the guy that I worked with on this particular project was Lisa's brother. His name is David Coleman. He went by Daoud, but he was really into sort of Arabic, culture, and he was really into that. He did Around the World in a Day, and did the arrangements for some of that stuff. I think he wrote some of that music.
Oh wow!
But their mother lived in the same complex. I lived in a complex downtown, and their mother lived. Lisa's mother lived in that complex. So David would be around, and so I said, "Listen, you're into this, this sort of Arabic culture and Middle Eastern kind of thing. You want to work on this project with me?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Love to." And so he wound up writing the most amazing cello arrangements for this girl. And her thing was, because she was part of when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, they were like on the last plane out, and her father was the Kuwaiti ambassador to, I think, France or something like that. So it was just unbelievable because, I guess women in that culturally aren't supposed to sing. So it was kind of a big deal for her to
Wow.
to sing, and I wound up, producing her project, and it, I mean, I guess it did well in Kuwait, and her father and her mother flew over, and they presented
Wow.
me with a distasha and an oud, and it was like, it was really, I mean, and it's a fabulous, phenomenal record. She did most of the writing. I really didn't do hardly any writing. I just produced it, but but she did the writing. She's an amazing writer, an amazing voice. Her name is Lena Hamas, and it's just an amazing album. But Daoud just completely, I mean, it's the arrangements are just unbelievable. They're out of this world.
That's amazing.
So yeah.
You have to state for the record, because I know we are going to have some avid Minneapolis sound fans write in, and I'm going to get emails about this, but it was not Grand Central that was on tour with Kool and the Gang and Rick James,
Right.
but it was you and Prince and the band.
Yeah, it was Prince's band. Yeah.
Prince band. Okay, great. Just for all the Wikipedia forum editors out there. Okay, well, we've come to that point in our Cambridge trip where I am just so hungry. It has been so long since I've eaten or gone to a hardware store, and I just find myself listening to my own thoughts about what would be a great snack to have by the fire. A s'more, of course, is a favorite here. So now you are an artist, an activist, and you have a lot of layers. Very meta. I expect a very meta s'more from you. But what is Andre Cymone's proprietary s'more?
Ooh.
As a parent, have you often sworn that you want to minimize screen time? Let's be honest, you're going to cave. Why not let your kids do something useful on the tablet, like Vooks, the online streaming library of kids-safe, ad-free books that are read aloud to your child? Let's talk to two actual bookworms.
Bookworms?
What do you guys think of Vooks? Oh, wow. That's amazing.
I can actually do it way better.
That's probably not necessary. That's me. All right, Jeb, do you like Vooks?
Yes.
Yes. Jeb,
Yes.
what's the last Vook that you watched?
You're not scared.
I am not scared.
What are you scared of?
Bad guys.
I'm scared of spiders.
If I'm a friend with spiders, I will like it.
You-
That spider.
Max, it's your turn to pick a book. Ruckus on the Ranch? What's that about? Causing a ruckus on the ranch. Causing a ruckus on the ranch. Do you actually read the words?
Yeah.
Is that why you're so smart?
No.
No?
What would you?
You're causing a ruckus on the set. You're causing a ruckus on the set. Head on over to join.vooks.com/redeem. Enter promo code WENTCamping for $25 off your Vooks subscription, which is basically 6 months of free Vooks. That's amazing. Do it now.
Well, let's see. Graham crackers. I would have to soak my graham cracker or my graham crackers maybe in rum.
Okay,
I
would
would
they
s-
get too mushy? How would we...
Well, you just douse them in some rum, put them bad boys in a toaster oven, let them, and then you're at camp. Okay, then put them on.
we'll have an oven. It'll be
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, toast them up and let them get nice and toasty with some rum on it, and then and I love popcorn, chocolate covered popcorn. So I'd have to
Ooh.
do that with a little mushroom, and then mushroom.
Wait,
Oh, wrong direction.
wait,
No.
mushroom?
Marshmallow. There you go. Mushroom. That's a different kind of high.
What kind of mushroom do you... well, you meant shiitake, right?
Yeah. No.
Little sushi Japanese flavor? No, we had a gentleman...
marshmallow.
We had a gentleman call for cucumber in his s'more, and Mark and I were like, cucumber? And it turned out he meant kiwi, but yeah, cucumber. So, all right, so mushroom popcorn.
Marshmallow, rum, popcorn, chocolate covered, and yeah,
All right.
that seemed like that'd be a tasty s'more.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, switching gears here, it's getting dark. It's a little chillier at night. Sometimes we contemplate the deeper things in life. I imagine you've lived such an interesting life. You've had to have had something spooky or interesting happen to you before.
Oh yeah.
Could you share with us a little mysterious or spooky story for the fire?
Ooh, let's see. I've got a few. Let's see. I'll tell you a very interesting. No, maybe not that one. Yeah, that could get misunderstood. Because there's, I mean, the thing is when you're a musician and you're traveling, you meet people, you never know what you don't know people. You just meet somebody for the first time and you think that they're cool, and then they turn out to be, maybe a little psychotic. And I've had a few of those incidents with people who have, taken me on long trips, and then I had to literally, physically say, listen, no, you're not kidnapping me, and so, yeah, or, God, it's just, there's so many different things. So I would just, if it's,
What's one where you've been really scared?
well, one where I was really scared was this young lady asked me to drive her home, and I was in a state that I think it's North Carolina or something that I'd never been in, but I was on tour, and so she asked me to drive her home, and she had come to the show and all that kind of stuff, and the people that she came with left her, so she was stranded, and so I was like, well, I don't know my way around, but I can give you a ride. And so she said, oh, could you? That'd be so nice. And so I was like, okay. And so I asked the road manager, can I use the car? And he's like, sure. So she gave her a ride home. I introduced me to her mother and all that kind of stuff, and it was really cool, and her family, and they were all really nice and all of that. And I was like, it was nice to meet you. And so I was like, I said, well, I don't know my way back, so you're gonna have to, sort of give me directions. And so she wrote it on a piece of paper, and and it seemed easy enough. And so and it was, by this time it's late and it's dark, and and so I'm coming on the way back, and I get lost, and I'm like, I have no idea where I'm at. And so I pull into this, what I thought was like a parking lot or something, and it turns out it was some sort of a trailer park. And there was like, I looked, and it was like these trailers, and I was like, where in the heck am I? And so I'm like, I'm pulling over, and I'm trying to look at the directions, and all of a sudden I hear this click, and I look, and there's some animal, on the window looking in my car, and I'm like, oh. So I'm just, and I'm creeping out, and all of a sudden it just looks like I am in the Twilight Zone, because it's like, I just don't know where I drove up, but it's like all these trailers. And I couldn't even figure out how to get out of the lot I was in. I don't even know how I got in there. And so I'm driving around, and all of a sudden these people come out and start, saying, hey, what are you doing here? And I'm like, oh, so I'm like, I'm not rolling down my window. And I'm just like, I'm just going to try to figure out how to get over it. And then they start sort of gathering around my car, and I'm just like, and they're like, open up, come in, and I'm like, I finally found my way out of there, and I just drive out. But yeah, that was weird, because I'd never been in a situation like that before.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, I wish we were sponsored by Google Maps or MapQuest. If only we could say brought to you by MapQuest. Right?
If that existed at that point, that would have been, because that was,
You do take that for granted, right? That you just can look up anywhere and drive. Like, I've driven through like South Africa on my GPS, just like hours north of Johannesburg. I'm like, oh, it's all mapped out.
Yeah, it's easy to do now, but then not so much.
Oh man, wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That would be scary.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you made it home.
Yeah.
All right, so you took was it a 24-year break?
Yeah.
From music.
27.
Yeah. And then you made a return.
Yeah.
And you did your first album in a long time. And I guess I'm curious, what is this chapter of your career looking like in music, and what's on your heart for this season? Well,
mostly it was, I felt like music was just in a weird place, and to me, nobody was speaking about the issues that were really important, and there was, I think the murder of Trayvon Martin really kind of pushed it for me, because I thought, musicians should be speaking out. I mean, there's so many people with platforms. There's so many things going on in the world, so many disparities for young black men and black women, and inequality and all that kind of stuff, that I thought, why, I mean, there's such little representation at that point. It was like 2012 actually, that nobody was speaking out. And I just thought, somebody ought to speak out. And I thought, well, I'm going to write a song. So I wrote Trayvon based on, his life and what had happened to him, and sort of capture that. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do that. I'm going to become a musical activist. And I'm going to just speak, through song about issues, and I started getting to these conversations with people on online about, activism. And I started, basically saying, where are all these people with these platforms? I mean, I've been out of the music business for decades, for a long time. And I'm speaking about these things, but where, athletes should be speaking out. They get paid crazy money. They should be speaking out because they know what's going on in the neighborhood that they came from. And so I started saying stuff and putting people on blast on social media, and, putting other artists, saying they should be speaking out. And, I mean, I'm just, I'm André Cymone, but, nobody knows who I am at this point. And so,
That's not true. A lot of people, when I told people I was interviewing you, a lot of people know who you were.
Yeah, I say I'm infamous because people can never quite, they know me from, they're not sure what they know me from, but anyway.
That's good. How do I know that guy?
I know that guy. I've heard that name, but,
North Carolina, right?
North Carolina. He was the one we surrounded. We was going to get him. No, he wasn't. But, it's just, but, I just decided, I got into that and then started, making music. And then I thought, I did the first album that was like rock and roll, because I thought, a lot of people don't understand the contributions that black folks had made to rock and roll. And to the music itself, to inventing the banjo and all that other kind of stuff. There's a lot of things that I thought, and I said, well, I always wanted to make a rock record, and so I thought that that's what I would do with my first record, because it was a very rock and roll album. And then the follow up to that, I thought, well, 1969 was a really pivotal year for so many different things. I want to address that, so I made an album that was conceptual, and I called it 1969. And it was about revolution and all this stuff, and Black Man in America, which was timely because it was before George Floyd and before all of that stuff, and all of the things that culminated with all of that were included in the lyrics, and that was done way before that happened. So a lot of people, it resonated with a lot of people, and they really kind of wanted me to do more stuff like that. And then it brings me to where I'm at now, and what we were talking about a little earlier, because the album I'm working on now is called The Resurrection of Funk, and it's basically the Minneapolis music that we created so many years ago. I really wanted to, I've always done it for other people, and I've sort of helped a lot of other people sort of realize their thing, and I've never done it for myself. So this will be the first time I'm doing it sort of for me. So
when will that be available for us to jam to?
Well, I'm trying to, we're shooting for my birthday, which is June 27th. So
all right.
Yeah. So it's basically done. I'm just sort of putting final touches and all that kind of stuff, but it's basically done. So yeah.
Well, I cannot wait to. I was the only 8th grader I know at 13, and I was like, yo, listen to the Minneapolis sound, and they're like, who is this kid from San Diego, little suburbs going Minneapolis sound? And, but I was like, y'all created something so special. And it's just to me. And I guess it's one of those things where it's like, you know how instrumental you were in doing that. And it's, that's why I was so excited to do this interview too, because I want more people to know, like, just the risk, because there's a lot of people involved in this, and it's not just one person or one thing. And I think it's cool to hear the players behind the scene. And I love that y'all were friends, and and I want to know where Jerome is.
I just talked to Jerome like day before yesterday. Yeah.
I want to make it to a point where someone travels the mirror for me. And I can- yeah.
Yeah, really. I mean, that's you should hear him tell that story, how that came about, because it's really cool. I mean, those guys are really cool, and I got Terry is a really cool human being. Terry Lewis is really cool. I actually used to go to. He was a track star in high school, and my family. I mean, I love track. My father was like really into track, and I was never. Only thing I would be running from was the police. I was like, just kidding. But Terry was like amazing, and I would love to watch him run because he would just smoke everybody, and it was amazing to watch. When you see people are really good at that, and he was amazing at it. And he played bass, and he had actually asked me to show him how I play. So I wound up going over to his house one day and showing him, hey, it's because I had at that point a very unique bass style, and he was curious to know, and we wound up woodshedding, and everybody was like that. There was another guy in the neighborhood that was part of starting that whole band, which is a guy named David Island. They called him Batman, and we would woodshed, and it was just a really cool environment back then. Everybody was Sonny Thompson. It was we had a community center. It was just a beautiful vibe.
That's so cool. I mean, I can only hope, and I joke. I don't know if there's a San Diego sound. I don't know if I'll be able to. But that's just, you all created something so amazing, and it's blessed so many people. So as we kind of wrap up here, I guess I try to ask this question as much as I can, and this is a particularly special question to put you on the spot, considering that she's in the studio audience right now too. Mm-hmm. But we always like to ask our guests: is there something you should say to your spouse you should say more often that you don't? Especially since she's with us.
I love
right now.
you. You're very special. You're very smart. One thing that I don't say very often is, I don't think that I would be here right now doing the things that I'm doing if it wasn't for her. So she really kind of pushes me. I'm a bit of a hermit, curmudgeon. She kind of pushes me out of that shell. I'm a Cancer, so yeah.
That's
so
awesome.
I have to give her major props for always putting that foot down.
And getting you that hardware store,
Get
right?
me to that hardware store. Build that shelf.
That's right. Build that shelf. So you mentioned how important fatherhood is to you, and what is something that you hope that your kids take as a major lesson from you, or what do you want your kids to really know?
That you can do anything you want. I mean, really. I mean, there's no impediment. There's no limit. You can, I mean, I never, for 1 minute, doubted that I would be doing what I've done, and I never thought that it wasn't going to happen, not for a second. And I mean, the one thing that I always say to my kids is, it's not how much you do, it's how much you get done. And I think that that's something that I would want them to always understand, is that, we can always, a lot of people start things, very few people finish them, and so I always try to tell them, if you have an idea or you have a dream, do it. But you got to put in the work, because nothing is ever easy. So,
If you were talking to yourself a couple decades ago, is there something you'd say, man, listen to me? Please listen to me. Don't get in that car, or whatever it is. Like, is there something that or a couple things that you're like, please, you would implore your former self to listen to, your old self to listen to?
I have to say, I mean, I was blessed to have some pretty smart parents who, really, they shaped me, pretty well, I have to say. They gave me a pretty well-rounded understanding of life. Not to mention, obviously Prince being, being a best friend, some of his philosophies, I carry with me. So I had a lot of that, but, I guess to just think, if there was something that I would tell myself, it would be to, I guess, that's a tough one. Because I learned, I guess that's the thing about being the youngest, is that you kind of learn from a lot of people's mistakes. So you don't make as many mistakes as you probably would if you didn't have sort of predestined, person going before you. I had older brothers that, made a lot of mistakes, older siblings that made, their mistakes. And then obviously Prince doing his thing before me. And so I saw all the different things that he had to navigate. So I thought I would do other things. The one thing that I guess in that I don't know that I would do that differently either, though. I was going to say, I would, rather than make an experimental album, I would just go straight for, trying to, hit top 40 kind of thing. But I wouldn't do that different either. I don't know. I guess.
I appreciate that. If you had a younger one, you got to watch other folks. Do you feel that, did money and power, or not money and power, but did money and fame change a lot of the people that you knew in the industry? Did you see it? I'm always curious what that effect is on people.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, I mean, without a doubt.
Yeah.
It changed people night and day. But it makes you realize, it made me realize what people get into music for. Because it's one thing to be talented, and that's great. It's wonderful if you're talented. It's wonderful if you're gifted, because those are not the same things. Being an artist and being an entertainer, those are not the same things. But I didn't get into music for the money. I didn't get into music for the fame. I didn't get into music for the chicks. None of that kind of stuff. I got into music because I like to create. I like to be artistic, and I don't care if I never cared if obviously the music that I make. I don't care if people buy it or they like it. If one person likes it, I'm good. But other people, definitely got into it, because somebody either said something about them and they said, I'll show them, and I'm going to be this and I'm going to be that, and then they, that was the impetus that, that sort of fueled their fire. I didn't have that, so I was unique in that way. And maybe, I think because I was that way, I think it rubbed off on some of the people around me.
Yeah.
And so they were able to sort of maybe balance it a little bit, because I was always very, very ambivalent about, all of that kind of stuff. I was like, I was just not impressed with, the things that I guess impressed some people, but just didn't impress me. It's like, what impresses me is people who are really good at what they do.
Yep.
And that's it.
That's all. I gotta say, that's one of my favorite things I've learned about you. Is it seems like when you put your head on your pillow at night, like you answer to yourself, and you're not gonna, you're not selling out to do someone else's vision and art. And at the end of the day, that means if you can't be true to yourself, then how much of an artist can you be? And I just really respect that. True rebel. You also seem very grounded too. I would say you must get that. You're grounded and you're very humble, despite the fact that and. You and your group of friends essentially, changed the musical world, from the frigid landscapes of Minneapolis. I guess if it's that cold outside, there's nothing to do but sit inside. That's my theory for why Sweden has so many great musicians.
Yeah, no, there's definitely something to it, because wintertime, we would be woodshedding, period. We would be down my mother's basement or the next door neighbor's basement, and we would be practicing, or we'd be doing gigs and we'd be lugging that equipment literally in the snow. I mean, picture that. Picture us in those heels, carrying a big giant amplifier up a flight of stairs.
Well, there comes a time in every camping trip where the fire's getting low and it's time for us to go.
All right.
Did I mean that to rhyme? For show. Anyways, Andre, thank you so much for joining us and making us one of your stops. Your so 3 stops this week. In fact, we are in a mobile studio, so we are going to take off and drive this thing to the hardware store for Andre. So appreciate you all for camping with us. We'll see you next time, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, folks. If you want to help us out, and we're confident you do, go ahead and hit that subscribe button here on our YouTube channel. And if you ever feel like just listening to these, you can check us out on all major podcast streaming platforms by just searching for I Went Camping With. and there you should also subscribe. Thanks again, folks.